Hey, welcome to the channel. In this video, we're going to look at how to create a search form using Hotwire. Namely, we're going to filter the search results using turbo frames, and we'll add a touch of StimulusJS for real-time filtering. And to do that, I'm going to reuse an application that I've built to show you how to use forms with Hotwire. If you want to see that video, you can check out the link in the description. But if you want to learn all about Ruby on Rails, including the new features in Rails 7, I'm making a new course for you. So make sure to check out this page here. So to review, this app allows you to add, update, and remove contacts by using this form and these delete buttons here. And now I want to add a search form on the index page that will list all the filtered results, or if there are no search filters applied, it will list everything. I've copied the list partial over to the index page template, and I've added a new search form on the top of the page. The form's action will be the index action, and we're going to add the search logic in the controller. But we don't want to put too much logic in the controller, so we're going to call the search method on the model and pass it the request params. And inside the model, we have a basic active record search that's performing a where using the like operator, and it's sanitizing the query string. So now, if we try this in the browser, we're going to see that it does work, but there's a small problem. It's not using Hotwire. And we can see that because it's re-rendering the entire page, and the input gets reset every time we submit the form. Everything we've done so far is just the standard old Rails behavior. There is nothing special here. So let's make it special. We're going to use turbo frames to update the page dynamically, but there's one minor gotcha with that. Any links or forms inside a turbo frame are scoped to that frame. So if we wrap the entire search form and its results in a turbo frame, we would lose the field focus, just like we do with the full page reload. Fortunately, we can target a frame that is outside of the form, so we can wrap the search results in a frame, and we can target that frame by using the turbo frame data attribute on the form. If we submit the form now, we'll see that the form field stays put, and the result frame gets updated. So the search works as expected, but the way it works might not be the way you expect. If we look at the page source, you'll see that the frame contents disappear, and they're being replaced with an src attribute pointing to a URL. This src attribute is used to fetch the response and update the frame. And if we send a different query, you'll see that the source URL changes. The HTTP response includes the frame, which is used to update the page, and the rest of the response is ignored. But the browser's address bar doesn't update, so you cannot bookmark this search or share it with someone because the URL points to the default index action. That's easily fixed by adding the Turbo Action Advanced attribute to the form, which tells Turbo Drive to append the URL to the browser's history. Another option is to use Replace instead of Advanced, which replaces the current URL, but you lose the history and you cannot go back to previous searches. So if we type something in the search field now and hit enter, you'll see that the browser's address bar changes, which makes the search shareable. Cool, so that works, but what if you want to make the search even more dynamic? Like, what if you want to search as you type? Well, we can do that by using StimulusJS. The way StimulusJS works is it connects a stimulus controller to one of your DOM elements, and it can handle user events through stimulus actions. But just to make things easier to wrap your head around, a stimulus controller is just a JavaScript object, and an action is just a JavaScript method. To generate a stimulus controller, we can use this command. And it will create a controller and run the manifest update task to register the controller by updating the index.js file. And by default, you get an empty connect method, which is one of the controller's lifecycle methods. And there are two more available. One is called initialize and the other one is called disconnect. Connect and disconnect are called every time the controller is connected or disconnected to and from the HTML element, which can happen multiple times. But initialized is called just once. Okay, so to connect this controller to our form, we need a data attribute on the form. And to confirm that it's connected, we'll add a console.log inside of that connect method. So if we refresh the page now, we can see the message in the console. Now to handle the form submit, we need to add a method to the controller, and we'll call it submit. But just adding the method is not enough. We need to also connect the user-generated events to this submit method. So to do that, we'll go to our search form and we're going to add another data attribute called action. And the value for this attribute has three components. The first one is the name of the event, and for that we'll use the input event because that's what gets triggered when you type in the text field. The second component is the name of the stimulus controller, and that's going to be search. And the last one is the name of the action that will be called when the event is fired, and that's going to be our submit action. Let's make sure that the wiring is working correctly by adding another console log to our submit action. And if we type something in the search bar now, we're going to see that message in the console. Okay, so now let's add some JavaScript and this submit action to trigger the form submit. Note that we do get the event as an argument here, but we're not going to use it. We're simply going to submit the form on every key press. If we type anything in the search box, we get one new request for every letter we type. So if I type Emma, for example, we can see 4 requests have fired. And each one has an additional letter. Well, that might work, it's not ideal because for one, if you have a lot of users, you get a ton of requests and it slows down your servers. And second, no one really cares about intermediate results. Like if I want to search for Emma, I only care about the word Emma and not all the letters that make up the word. So we only want to search for words, and we can do that by sending the request after the user has stopped typing. This is a very common thing to do, and it's called debouncing. So I'm going to find a debouncing library and I'm going to install it by using yarn add debounce. And then I'm going to import it in my stimulus controller file. And the debouncing should be done in the initialize method because we only want to call it once. The debounce function takes a function and it returns a debounced version of that function. So we're going to give it our submit method and a delay of 300 milliseconds. And then we're going to assign the debounced version to this.submit. So now whenever we call submit, we're calling the debounced version. And to confirm that all this is working, let's do a search for Emma again. This time, if we look in the network tab, we'll see that just one request got fired instead of 4. I hope you found this video useful, and if you want to see more, make sure to check out the videos I've linked in the description. Bye!